Good morning, friends. I wanted to hop on and share because writing takes lots of concentration for me. And just sharing is sometimes a little easier. So recently, I spent a couple hours on an evening helping out my friend Christina at the food bank with their first evening grocery distribution, right? Like they scheduled additional days for pickups to improve their accessibility, especially, people who don't have the time or the ability to go in and do their shopping at the food bank because they have a shopping model set up. So I was there helping out, came back to find my kids had somehow used toilet paper and clogged the bathtub drain and flooded the bathtub and the bathroom, and at around the same time a bunch of lights went out upstairs. So the lights in the bathroom went out and half of the outlets in our bedroom stopped working. And so I came home and and understandably my husband is frustrated. And he is going into his not enoughness pattern, and he's frustrated with the kids, and he is frustrated with the situation of all of it. And I could feel his frustration immediately. And the story that my typical pattern is when that happens is, he's blaming me that I am not allowed to leave him with the kids and do things, even if those things are work related, right? Like that he resents having to watch the kids. Like that is my autopilot, right? And we can choose to not follow that autopilot. And so instead, what I did, because I came home pretty amped up and sovereign from connecting with people and spreading light. And so I came home and I sort of saw this situation, and I did not go into fear and panic or into suffering about it, which would be potentially a reasonable reaction, right? Like, this is bad. This is going to cost a lot of money. This is going to take up time. I'm going to have to create more work for myself, like finding an electrician, sitting home waiting for the electrician, right? But having enough awareness to not go down that path. And instead, I took the kids, got them out of his hair so he could have a moment to breathe, because we all know what that's like to be around dysregulated littles. And so I got the kids and we settled and did some reading together. And then I let him know, because he's an engineer, right? Like he wants to fix all of the things. I let him know he didn't need to fix it immediately, that it wasn't an emergency. The clogged drain, that is, that the kids could go without the bathtub for a couple days. Like we have a shower, they could shower. But at that point, he had already unclogged it and fixed it. And then he and I sat down and we had a talk, about how interference and contrast work, and how, I pour a lot of light into the world and I get a lot of contrast that comes with it, right? Because that is the way of things. And I asked him if it bothered him, right? Like if he ever gets sick of kind of the contrast that comes up with the light. And he said no, right? And so I asked him what was upsetting for him, right? Like why was his energy off? And he said Oh, and I had asked him about whether he gets upset when he has to watch the kids, like when I'm out of the house. And what he said was that he actually feels like, because when I have the kids, I am also like managing the house and working, that when he has the kids, he feels like he should also be busy and doing things. And I was like, yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, I do those things because I have to, right? Because that stuff has to get done. And I have not manifested that help yet. It is a work in progress. And that I would be, right, like overjoyed if he just took the kids and did fun things with them, because my objective is that the kids are taken care of, and preferably not destroying the house or each other. And like, we talked about it. We had a conversation. We talked about what was hard. We talked about like the what is of the situation. I said I would, find an electrician, that we would sort out the light situation. We got some flashlights, right, for nighttime bathroom uses. And I booked an electrician who sounded very lovely on the phone, and waited. Right, like I had called the next morning when they opened. He said they would get somebody out that afternoon. I told him I had a work meeting at 5:30. He said they would get somebody there before then. And then as 5:30 is rolling around, I'm realizing he never asked for my phone number. So I called and I left a message just asking if they were still planning to come, that I had made arrangements for my husband to come home, but that I understood it was late in the day, and they did not come that day. And I could have gone into suffering around that too. But it actually gave me an opportunity to stay home and like really clean the house, and like cleanse the house, and like crack the windows open, and like just command anything that doesn't belong in the house to get out of the house, right? Because we have the authority to do that. And generally I would do that pretty regularly when everybody in the house gets sick, because like that's the sign to me that the house is getting filled with interference energy and it needs to get out. And like essentially clean everything, and also crack windows open, and like set that intention, right? Like, we are getting everything that does not belong in this house out of this house, including the germs. And so I did that. And I got the house really clean in terms of, right, like that now an electrician can come in and like get through these rooms and get to where he needs to go. So the next morning, the owner of the electric company calls. He apologizes for not getting back to me the day before and not getting somebody out, says that they're going to send somebody before they even start their route, that somebody would be there within minutes as long as that's okay with me. So I'm like, fine. I get cleaned up. Kids are still asleep. The most lovely human shows up at my doorstep, and I show him where the breaker box is. I show him the affected outlets. He spends multiple hours here because apparently there's an outlet in our house somewhere that has lost its ground. And so now the circuit is incomplete, and it's like we have a general idea of where it is, but now he's having to find the ungrounded outlet. And so he did finally find it. And it turns out, right, because of the age of our house, and because of the way they used to wire boxes, this ground, has been vibrating, and it's like screwed in place, but over decades, right? Like, it gets loose and it comes off, and that could cause the wires to arc, right? So there was an outlet that was out downstairs that we had never noticed because we don't plug anything into it. And the outlet that was affected was actually still working. And then, right, like, it was still running power to our refrigerator, but the power wasn't getting upstairs. So essentially, like, the power going out and alerting us that there was a problem potentially saved our house from being burned down from an electrical fire. right? And now we are aware that there is this problem with the way our outlets are wired, and we can hire them to come back and rewire our outlets, which will be way cheaper than replacing an entire house. So there have been lots of house fires in our area recently. And now that makes more sense, right? Because these houses were built around the same time. And like, who has time to go around checking electrical outlets, right? Because he said you could get a tester and you can put it in your outlet and jiggle it. And if the light flickers on the tester when you're jiggling, then you know there's a problem in that outlet. And you should have somebody come look at it. But like, who would know, right? So my point being, sometimes stuff happens and it looks like it's a bad thing, right? Like, this is so bad. We could have gone there. Like, oh, our lights are out. This is so bad. And like, what's funny is I've lived places, not lived, but like spent time in places for weeks for like a mission trip or for travel where electricity is not an all-day thing. Like, you get a couple hours a day. And I had just been like considering like turning the electricity of the house off for a while during the day, just because like my kids have this habit of leaving on like every light and device in the house. And that's like something that still makes me crazy. Mostly because it's really wasteful, and right. And like, they're kids, like no concept of, right. How that affects the environment. Like, I could tell them, but like, they don't get it yet. And so, right, like for me, I'm like, oh, well, now no one's going to be leaving the bathroom light on, right? Like, no one's going to leave the bathroom light on. Maybe we'll save on our electric bill. But it was, right, like it was a non-thing. And then it turned out that potentially bad thing actually saved our house, right? Like, and that feels like divine fingerprints on it. So yeah, my invitation to you today is, when something happens that you could immediately jump to that thing being bad, pause and question whether that's really true, right? Like, is it good or bad, or is it just what it is? You know, I used to be somebody who would kind of go into a panic if I was running late. Like, that's the perfectionism, right? If I'm running late. And then I used to be like, well, what if running late is saving me from getting into an accident somewhere, right? Like, what if it's averting me from something that would have been a problem? Like, I don't know. I have no way of knowing. And I have no way of knowing, right? Like, that it's not in my best interest. So, you know, just taking that moment to not go down that pathway. And to maybe be like, okay, divine, like, I trust you that you've got this. Like, you take care of it. Which is not always where I'm able to go, but I was in this instance, and I didn't get caught up in the scarcity about what it was going to cost, and it actually was a lot less than I would have expected, and the person was really kind, and they were all really helpful, and the guy who came happens to be a neighbor from up the street, so I got to meet a new person in my neighborhood, right? Like, you just don't ever know. So yeah, I hope that wherever you're at on your journey, that you can be with yourself, that you could show up for yourself, that you could meet your own needs, and you can trust the divine to be there for you and not be afraid to ask for help, because you got to ask for help. That's the free will. And, you know, if you're struggling, just know you're not alone. And you have people, and if you can't think of anybody, then you've got me, and I am rooting for you, because you're totally lovable and worthy. And I hope you have a fantastic day.